guys, I am going to do a sort of wrap up what I've read, how my reading goals are going for January. I've not done this before, but it seems like a good idea, so hopefully this will be the first of many. I have actually done surprisingly well in my reading goal. I have read 8 books this month. Not gonna lie, a few of them have been quite short books. It doesn't matter, still read them. I have upped my goal on Goodreads from 40 to 50. I mean, I don't really mind if I don't read 50 this year, because even though I've had quite a good start this month, I know maybe in the coming months I'm not going to be reading as much because I mean, I've got dissertation proposal and essays to write, and May is going to be a complete write-off with exams. So I will show you the books that I read. The first one is one that I actually started last year, and it's The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien. Not going to say too much about this because obviously everyone really knows about it. This was actually a reread for me. I read this first when I think I was about 9 or 10, so it's been a good decade, more than a decade since I read this last, and I really wanted to reread it before the movie came out. Although I didn't finish it before the movie came out, I did manage to read to at least the point that the movie went to, so that was fine. I still sort of had the storyline and what happens clear enough in my head to sort of compare the movie, which was very different, but sort of equally as good, just in a different way. I absolutely love the movie, and I do really like this book. But I think I am really looking forward to reading The Lord of the Rings, which I've never read before, because I think they'll have that element that's missing from The Hobbit because of it being for younger readers, although I'm going to miss the sort of humorous aspects of The Hobbit, especially the first half. There's quite a few funny incidents I really enjoyed, and I do like my comical books. But yeah, finished The Hobbit. Next is also a book that there is a movie coming out for shortly, and it's Warm Bodies. Again, one that everyone is reading at the moment, so I'm not going to say too much about it, but after all the rave reviews and watching the trailer, really caught my attention, so I downloaded it on my Kindle and read it in about 3 days. So obviously I liked it. I did finish it quite snappily. I think the first 100 pages were a bit slower. I felt like I was just waiting for the first 100 pages for them to leave the airport, and I was just in a sort of state of anticipation. But then when I got past the first 100 pages, the rest of it I just finished like that, because it was a really good book. It's the first ever zombie book I've read. It's not really a genre that's ever been like, oh, I have to read about zombies. So yeah, it was a strange book, at least from my perspective. I think it was also a strange book because obviously one of the main characters is a zombie, and it is told from the perspective of a zombie, which I'm pretty sure isn't particularly common in zombie books, nor are zombies falling in love with humans. So I don't know if it's really given me much of an impression of what the zombie genre is like, but I did really enjoy this book. I don't know if I'd reread it. I feel like I got everything I wanted from it from the first read, but I am really looking forward to the movie, and can't wait to see that. Next 2 books I feel like are a little bit of a cheat, but they're still going on my list, and they were manga. I'm sorry if I'm not pronouncing that right. I read Volume 8 and Volume 9 in the Vampire Knight series, which is just sort of like a shoujo manga series. Shoujo manga is, again, I'm probably pronouncing that wrong, but like shoujo, it's particularly aimed at sort of teenage girls, and I know I'm not a teenager anymore, but still, it's definitely aimed at the female sex. But I don't think that means you can't read these. They're just they're obviously about vampires. There's just, I mean, I do find this kind of manga and genre quite cheesy. It's a little bit predictable, but it's quite, I mean, especially if you appreciate the artwork, which I think you really need to if you're going to read manga, otherwise you're only getting half the experience, then they are really pleasant to read. They just sort of like a little escape from your mind. They don't require too much brain power, not in a bad way, but it's just like graphic novels and manga in general are just sort of like a nice little escape for reading, quite easy, just sort of like a cool down of your brain, and yeah, they do get quite addictive. Like, you read one and if you just, I'm like, oh my god, I have to read the next one. Next 4 were all books that I read for university, so they were all classics related. First, I'll talk about the non-fiction, the fiction ones. Both were tragic plays because I'm studying a course on Greek tragedy this year. Both by Sophocles. One was Aias, which is or Ajax in Latin, and more people probably know him by that name. Sophocles' Aias is about sort of how Aias goes mad after the Trojan War. He feels like he's been hard done by in the fact that, contextualising the play, him and Odysseus both saved Achilles' body and armour after he died, and they both argue over who gets to keep the armour, and Odysseus gets to keep it, so Aias feels quite angry. Probably a better word out there for that, but anyway, he's angry, he goes insane, but this was only 50 pages long and I did enjoy reading it. Although I would say if you haven't read the Iliad or aren't familiar with the characters from the Iliad and the Trojan War myths and Achilles and Odysseus and Ajax and stuff like that, then I would probably give this a miss, because I feel like you wouldn't really be following what was happening or really care about any of the characters. So next was Oedipus the King. This is actually Sophocles' Theban plays, which includes Antigone, Oedipus the King, and Oedipus at Clonis. I read Oedipus the King, which is like the epitome of tragedy, or like in our interpretation of it, it's just so depressing. Just like rubbish after. It's just the entire play is just a sort of gradual build up to all these terrible things that have happened, culminating in just an awful ending. But it's done really well, and it is a really good play, and it's one of the most venerated ancient Greek tragedies. Again, this one I think you could read independently of not really knowing about the background myths, because I wasn't that familiar with Oedipus, although it's pure non-fiction, so I won't say much about them. Casillas' history of Persia, which is the collected fragments of the historian Casillas, who wrote about ancient Persia, and Casillas was a Greek. Like sometimes, obviously academic books can be a bit overwhelming and confusing. This was very well written, very laid out, very accessible, and I really enjoyed learning more about Casillas. And next was Aristotle's Poetics. Aristotle, I'm sure some of you have heard of. He was an ancient Greek philosopher, and this is his book on he talks about the genres of epic poetry and tragedy, and just talks about what makes a good tragedy and what makes a good epic poem from his perspective. Yeah, so that's my 8 books. Quite a mixture there. I haven't actually finished any of my unfinished books. Although I suppose I had started The Hobbit, but it hadn't been that long ago and I hadn't really stopped reading it. Yeah, so we're not too much further ahead in the unfinished books goal. I have been reading Carpe Jugulum by Terry Pratchett. I haven't finished it, so hopefully next month I'll try and get that finished at least. I also want to do a book about my favourite classics in general, like favourite classical literature books, because a few of you have asked, and I think that I agree that would be a good video. I also want to do a not a starter's guide, but a kind of guide to my favourite Terry Pratchett books and what I think are the best ones to start with, because obviously there's so many Terry Pratchett books and it's a bit confusing knowing where to start. Anyway, I'm rambling. I will see you all again very shortly, especially for me since I'm about to just film another video. Okay, have a lovely February everyone. Bye.